This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
DR Congo soldiers kill at least 26 suspected ISIL fighters near Beni. South Sudan community clashes leave at least 22 dead. And Nigeria's President Buhari to continue tackling insecurity and economy in second tenure. Hello and welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. We'll bring you the details on those stories and others in just a moment. But first, Rama Nyang with the day's business headlines. Rama.
Yes, indeed, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. Tanzania will export some 700,000 tons of maize to drought-hit Zimbabwe. And Huawei will continue to invest in its 5G development program despite a blacklist from the United States. Details on those stories and plenty more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, though, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And let's begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where security forces have killed at least 26 rebel fighters who are suspected to have links with ISIL. The battle took place near Beni City, where different militias have been operating from. According to an army spokesperson, the fighting broke out after the fighters attacked an army base in a nearby village. Last month, ISIL claimed responsibility for an attack in Bovata, in which several Congolese soldiers were killed. Residents of Ngite, where the Thursday fighting took place, say they saw bodies of foreign and local fighters.
I have seen the bodies of the ADF rebels. They are not our brothers, because we have lost our mothers, children, and also the fact that my younger brother was slaughtered, and up till now, we still have no idea where his body is or was buried.
We have seen Somalis, Rwandese and Ugandans there. We ask the President of the Republic to continue with the work he's doing so that we can be helped. We are in need of peace.
Well, CGTN's Chris Ochamringa is in Bukavu in South Kivu and has been following up on the story for us. Chris, Congo forces have reportedly killed 26 Islamist rebels in the Ebola zone shootout. What more do we know about this?
Well, some security forces informed us that armed men attacked an Congolese army base in a place called Ngite, that's in Ebola, one of the hotspots, Beni, one of the Ebola hotspots in the DRC, and they killed 4 Congolese soldiers, and the soldiers retaliated and killed 26 of them. A MONUSCO, a car of one of the UN peacekeepers here in the DRC was also shot at, and the Congolese forces pursued the people who took off. That's what we have got so far.
Chris Ochamringa in Bukavu in South Kivu for us there in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Apologies for that technical sound hitch. Let's stay in the Democratic Republic of Congo for the moment, where the transmission of the Ebola virus continues to intensify, this time in North Kivu and Ituri provinces. The epidemic has recently taken an unusual toll on children who are more vulnerable to the disease. CGTN's Brian Toussaint has more on this story.
The Ebola outbreak in Congo, the second largest on record, has taken an unusually heavy toll on children. According to the World Health Organization, more than a quarter of the confirmed and probable cases identified as of early April were children under 15. The disease can progress rapidly, crippling the immune system and shutting down vital organs.
It all started with a headache, chest pains, backaches, then I was vomiting a lot and blood started coming out of my mouth. I had already had a miscarriage at this hospital, and after they tested me, they quickly put me into a taxi straight to the Ebola treatment center. I know I contracted Ebola at that hospital, and even when I miscarried, the tests on my baby were positive for Ebola.
Young children and babies are especially vulnerable. Their small bodies are less equipped to cope with extreme fluid loss brought on by common symptoms such as diarrhea, vomiting, fever, and bleeding. Marcela Casuera said she had sent her children to their older brother in the village of Biakatu after their hometown of Oicha was attacked by members of an Islamist militia. When they returned, her 7-year-old son was feverish and they rushed him to the hospital.
When we arrived at the hospital, before the doctor even touched him, the child had already died in my hands. They started to inquire about us, and I told them they came from Biakato. They did not even enter the house. It was the next morning that the results came out, and they notified us that the child died of Ebola.
From WHO numbers, in this outbreak, women and girls account for 58% of cases, down from 62% in December. The reason more women and children have fallen sick remains a mystery.
The kids and the mothers are the ones who are more frequently visiting the health facilities. And if the health facilities are unsafe, because when there is a case, they deal improperly with it. If they use injections not safely, etc., then they may contaminate other kids or other patients that are usually most frequently kids. So that's the main reason of the high proportion of kids and women.
This is Congo's 10th Ebola outbreak, but it is the first in the densely populated provinces of North Kivu and Ituri. Militias carry out sporadic raids from hidden strongholds in the tropical forest, and women and children are often the first to be displaced by the bloodshed. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
At least 22 people have been killed following rival community clashes this week over cattle raids between two border regions in northern South Sudan. A soldier is also said to have died during the confrontation. The clashes in the county of Turale left 18 others injured and 3,000 heads of cattle looted. Community clashes in the country, which often involve looting of cattle, abduction of children and women, have led to deaths of thousands across the country. Well, CGTN's Patrick Oyet is joining us from Juba. He's on the line from Juba, joining us with more on that development. Patrick, South Sudan community clashes have left 22 dead. What is the latest on the situation?
Yes, Beatrice. Actually, the latest on the situation is that the local people we have spoken to who have been living in Turale are saying the number of the dead has gone up to 47 actually, and 26 people are wounded. Of course, as you rightly mentioned, this attack happened in Turale in a place known as Six State, in a former Warab state. This is a state where the president of South Sudan, President Salva Kiir, comes actually from. And this attack has come as a surprise to many because President Salva Kiir had declared a state of emergency after many clashes that happened at non-communities there. And we had seen in the last 1 year, the attacks had gone down. And with the signing of the peace agreement, people had hoped that this kind of attacks would actually not happen. But we have seen, and local communities there are saying that the area has been left. Many of the people have run away. Their houses have been burnt down. 6,000 herds of cattle have been taken away by the raiders. And the local communities are fearing that perhaps there could be another attack. So they have actually left the whole 2 counties actually empty. They have moved to other areas that they think are a little bit safe for them.
Patrick, what are the reasons given for the clashes, and what is the government doing to help improve security in that region?
Yeah, first of all, the national government has not yet actually done much according to the local authorities, because the national government is looking at this issue as an issue of the state. Stated the local government here that it hopes would handle the situation. They say they would only come in if they see that the state has failed to handle the situation, because the clashes are alleged to have occurred by members of another state. So they expect the 2 states to sit down and handle the issues amicably. So the national government has not done much as far as that is concerned. And then the issue of reasons as to why most of these attacks occur. One of them is, of course, because of improper justice system. The justice system in South Sudan is still very weak, and therefore people take law into their hands. You know, somebody comes and kills your family members, and they are not taken to court, they are not prosecuted, they are not jailed, and you see them walking. So this brings in the culture of revenge, you know. So people wait. Like now, for example, they have attacked state, they have killed people. If nothing is done, if the people of Twitch would wait, even if it needs 2 years or 3 years, and they will surprise the communities that attack them and kill people, raid and loot. You know, so this is why this kind of attacks continue so much in South Sudan. Another thing is, of course, the issue of the war that has been going on. Many community members have been armed. If I'm a general in the army, I go and arm the youth in my village, and then I use them to fight on the side I support, and with the many armed groups around. And whenever the war gets to a stop, or you know, we get tired, we can just go home with all those weapons. So you find that communities are armed as armed as the regular armed forces. So that's why when the clashes take place, the casualties are normally very high, and so many people lost their lives. So much destruction is done in the society. These are some of the reasons as why these things do happen.
Patrick Oyet joining us there on the line from Juba. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has been sworn in for his second term and last tenure to lead Africa's most populous nation for the next 4 years. He is faced with an enormous task of tackling numerous problems, including insecurity and a struggling economy. Our correspondent Phil Ihaza reports from the country's capital, Abuja.
President Muhammadu Buhari swears the new oath of office in the presence of thousands of hopeful Nigerians and top officials. He was re-elected in February among 70 other contenders, including former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. Some analysts say not much progress was made in his first administration.
To me, the problem of Nigeria in the last 4 years have not changed. And they are just as simple as a Nigerian can tell. The problem of insecurity that affects the unity of the country, the problem of corruption that affects the psyche of the nation and the accountability process itself, the problem of economy, which affects every man's, every home and every family.
President Buhari's first term did see insurgents pushed out of 17 local government areas they previously controlled. However, insecurity challenges, including a rising threat of kidnapping and banditry, persist. The president also launched an economic growth and recovery plan, but Nigeria currently has nearly 100 million citizens living in extreme poverty, according to World Poverty Clock.
I think if the president wants to perform and he wants to solve this problem, he can help himself by bringing on board people that are competent and experienced, perhaps professionals who could man those ministries for him, so that at the end of 8 years, that is, if he survived the legal hurdle before him now, he can have good legacies and good name attached to his name.
As the clock ticks for Mr. Buhari, some Nigerians have mixed feelings on whether he will deliver this time.
Last 4 years was very bad. People were complaining too much. But these 4 years that is coming up, it will be better. Our president will do better.
I totally believe that even if we can't solve 100% of the problems, but at least we can make a positive strides in the right direction. The last 4 years, it was not too bad, in all honesty, if you have to be very pragmatic in your approach.
Buhari's administration claims to have recovered over $9.1 billion in stolen money and assets. They have pledged to continue the crackdown on corruption. In the coming days, President Buhari will be announcing a new set of ministers. Nigerians hope the president and his cabinet can take the country to the next level. Phil Ihaza, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
16 migrants are among the survivors of the shipwreck of the Tunisian cities of Fax and Gabis, who embarked from Libya. At least 70 migrants drowned in this incident earlier this month. CGTN's Adnan Chauchi is following the developments from Tunis.
Over 70 migrants drowned this month following the shipwreck of their boat in international waters, 40 miles off the cities of Gabis and Fax. 16 survivors were rescued by fishing boats and the Tunisian Navy.
We sailed from Zuwara in Libya in a big ship, then we were moved to a wooden Zodiac. We were 75 people. The boat sank at midnight. At 8 a.m., a Tunisian ship saved me, then the Tunisian Navy rescued others. Thank God I'm alive. I'm waiting for repatriation to Egypt or to obtain a work permit here in Tunisia.
A Moroccan survivor recounts the horrible conditions in which migrants were forced by armed smugglers to abandon their first ship.
I saw people sinking, but I could not do anything. The smugglers did not care about our safety. They used arms to force us to leave the big ship to a small one, which sank immediately.
The Tunisian Red Crescent says 4 survivors are still in a critical condition at Zarzis Regional Hospital.
We are providing medical assistance, food and shelter to 12 survivors as well as psychological assistance. Some of these victims have lost their relatives in the shipwreck. One survivor lost his 3 brothers who drowned. It's a human tragedy.
51 Bangladeshi migrants were on board the boat, 14 of whom were rescued and 28 bodies recovered.
The public prosecutor's office at Sfax Court of First Instance has ordered an investigation into the circumstances of the sinking of migrants of the Gulf of Gebes and Sfax that left 70 missing. The investigation is initiated under Article 31 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. Adel Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Heads of states of the Arab world are in Saudi Arabia for an emergency Arab League summit. King Salman bin Abdulaziz has called for these meetings, citing increased Iranian threats. The heads of state will then attend a routine summit of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. 27 African countries are members of the IOC. The leaders will discuss key challenges in the Islamic world and in Africa. Well, let's cross over to CGTN's Adel Mahrouri. He's in Mecca following up the summit proceedings. Adel, Sudan is witnessing political instabilities. It is expected to be one of the main topics of the Islamic Leaders Summit. What is expected exactly?
Well, basically, the first of all is the representation for Sudan. We have seen Marshal Abdel Fattah Burhan attending the summit for his first of a kind of such a gathering. He appears in a civilian suit, which is also the first time and an indication of his representation as the head of state. And it seems that the Arab powers in the region, Egypt, namely UAE specifically, have been pushing Abdel Fattah Burhan to take that role. Before his visit to Mecca, he has been touring the Middle East. He has met Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Mohammed bin Rashid, the vice emir and the vice head of the UAE, before his tour here, which has been now more of a clear preparation for this summit. Sudan is the key step for the foreign ministers and for the leaders, is to give, first of all, recognition to the Military Transitional Council, and from that part to encourage Arab countries to support both economically and politically to help the Sudanese people reach their political transition within the coming 2 years in as steady and peaceful manner as possible.
Adel, is it likely that a consensus on tangible roadmaps for Libya or counter-terrorism efforts in the Sahara can be reached?
Well, that's a very complicated, it's not a simple answer. Basically, the Arab world, the Islamic world, and Africa have common goals, yes. Counter-terrorism is the headline that has been the key and the most threatening, actually, topic for the entire region, sub-Saharan in specific, from Nigeria to Somalia, and of course going through the rest of the region in North Africa. This entire region has been quite complex, and it seems that with the conflict, for example, going on in Libya, that has been fueling ISIL's presence in that region. So a consensus in terms of rejecting terrorism and commanding or asking for intervention or for each state to work on it, that will be easily achieved. However, there are some regional powers that support some of these Islamist groups or fuel division in countries of conflict, and therefore indirectly would be fueling the presence of these terrorist organizations. So that's a big issue. For Libya, it is exactly the same. All parties are expected, the leaders of this OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, they will condemn the violence in Libya, they will condemn any military solution. But when it comes to practical on-ground assistance, there are regional powers that are supporting General Khalifa Haftar in his offensive against Tripoli, and there are those Islamists who are supporting the government of national accord in western Libya. And that will remain, and it is highly expected, it will remain after such conference and after such summit is over. So it may not be as influential as expected.
Adel Mahroui joining us there from Mecca. Thank you. You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. The IOM to help repatriate at least 2,300 stranded Ethiopian migrants back home. And UN peacekeepers construct bridges to tackle armed attacks on villages in the CAR.
After many months of research and 1 month of intensive rehearsals, Moremi the musical is about to open its doors to an eagerly awaiting public.
This is the only entertainment in Nigeria today that allows for families to go out.
Moremi the musical is a play based on a true story of a heroine from the Yoruba tribe of Nigeria called Moremi Ajashoro.
I know that everybody that left here saw something that they haven't seen in the theater for a long time in the country. And it's a feeling that it's so special.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The International Organization for Migration says it is planning to repatriate over 2,300 Ethiopians back home from Yemen. Many of them had been seeking employment and are reportedly struggling to support themselves or fund their travels back home. Coletta Wanjohi reports from Addis Ababa.
A delayed evacuation of Ethiopian migrants returning from Yemen began this week. The International Organization for Migration says of the over 2,000 migrants, 150 are women and 470 are children who needed urgent evacuation. The evacuation was planned to take place on 25th of May. However, delays in flight approvals by authorities in Yemen has meant flights started 4 days later. A flight a day for a total of 8 days has been planned. Despite the ongoing conflict in Yemen, Ethiopians seeking economic opportunities in the Gulf countries continue to make the dangerous journey by land and sea to the Arabian Peninsula. Coletta Wanjohi, CGTN in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
We now head to the Central African Republic, where the UN peacekeeping mission MINUSCA has been constructing permanent bridges in villages near the border with Cameroon. The aim is to allow access to the areas that are still rocked by attacks by armed groups. Here's CGTN's Brian Toussaint with more on that.
Gambula and Nufu are some of the villages that have been facing frequent attacks by armed groups. They lie on the border with Cameroon and are detached from the rest of the Central African Republic. Rebel fighters blew up bridges, thus making it hard for peacekeepers to patrol them.
Since our patrol are moving daily from Gambula to Dilapok, the security situation is calm but unpredictable, because formerly this Dilapok was the place where there is a lot of armed group named Siriri, and currently there are Siriara and the Siriri.
The presence of gold and diamonds makes this region prone to groups keen on illicit mining and trade in the minerals. Now, things are different. UN mission in the country, MINUSCA, has now put up several permanent bridges, which has allowed peacekeepers to patrol the villages. This has seen attacks reduce marginally.
This area from Gambula to Dilapok is covered by thick forest, and there is a lot of bridges, of which they are made of timber. And our troops here are working with using APCs of heavyweight, huge one. that we need concrete bridges with cement so that we can move smoothly from Gambula towards Dilapoko and Dilapoko towards Nufu.
Grâce au pont là, la MINUSCA maintenant.
Thanks to the new bridges, the MINUSCA camp is now not too far. The community feels more secure. If anything happens, the local leaders can easily ask for reinforcements. This bridge is of huge importance to us.
Donc le pont là, je vois vraiment une grande nécessité.
A shaky peace signed between the government and several militias in February is in place. From previous failed attempts at peace, the international community is hoping that peace returns to the Central African Republic and end the fighting that took a religious turn at some point. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
Meanwhile, Chinese peacekeepers from the engineering detachment joined a local children's home as part of observing the International Children's Day. The SOS Children's Village in Bukavu has also benefited with a water supply system that was constructed by Chinese troops. The children also received gifts such as school bags, stationery and sports equipment. The commander of China's 22nd Peacekeeping Engineer Detachment to the DRC spoke of the challenges that the soldiers endured while putting up the water system.
The peacekeepers braved the heavy rains and the sun. They fought for more than 20 days, every day from the morning to the night. They finally accomplished the mission today. When we see the children lining up with buckets to draw the water, we feel that the hard work was worth it.
Libya has handed over Hisham Ashmawi to Egypt. He's said to be a highly dangerous terrorist and leader of militant groups such as Ansar Beit al-Maqdis. He was arrested last October in eastern Libya. Yasser Hakim looks at the history of Hisham Ashmawi and the significance of this arrest.
He's the most wanted man in Egypt. After being dismissed from the army in 2011, the former Special Forces officer became a leader of the terrorist groups Ansar Beit al-Maqdis and Daesh in Sinai. The groups are responsible for scores of killings and bombings in Egypt since 2012. The assassination of the public prosecutor in 2013. The failed assassination attempt on Minister of Interior in 2013. The bombing of the police headquarters in Western Egypt in December 2013 and 14 people were killed. An attack on Al Farafra military checkpoint in July 2014 and 28 soldiers were killed. An attack on a bus carrying Coptic worshippers in Upper Egypt in May 2017, killing 29 people. And an attack on police convoy in Oasis Desert in October 2017, killing 16 policemen.
He established several extremist organizations in Libyan territories and coordinated with Al-Qaeda leaders in the region. He also trained many militants in El Salvador area in southern Libya. This area was the springboard from where extremists were sent to launch their attacks in Libya, Egypt, and the rest of North Africa. His arrest is a big blow to the extremist groups in the region.
Ashmawi has been based in Derna, eastern Libya, where he pledged allegiance to Al-Qaeda in Maghreb in 2015. Experts say his arrest is significant for the fight on terrorism.
It has extreme strategic importance for the security officials. Hisham el-Ashmawi possesses a wealth of information about the movement of militants in the area and the sleeper cells in northern Sinai and borders with Libya. Ashmawi is the black box of Al-Qaeda in North Africa, and extracting information from him would help in the crackdown and dismantling of these terrorist organizations.
The extremely dangerous man was arrested in an ambush by the Libyan army in Derna, and he was prevented from detonating his explosives belt when he was captured.
Extradited to Cairo, Hisham Ashmawi will face trial for the terrorist attacks he masterminded in Egypt in the last 6 years. And if convicted, he is expected to receive the death penalty. Yas Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Well, let's return to Nigeria, where in addition to the Boko Haram insurgency, Nigeria is battling to contain a spate of banditry and kidnappings. These armed attacks have led to the deaths of over 300 Nigerians in the first 3 months of this year alone. Several groups have now been staging protest rallies. They are urging the government to do more to protect citizens and stop the killings. Here's CGTN's Deji Badmos with more on that story.
As President Buhari was taking the oath of office for his second term as president in faraway Abuja, hundreds of kilometers in Lagos, the civil society group was setting the security agenda for him.
Can no longer be business as usual. What are we saying? Enough is enough. Enough of killings, enough of kidnappings, enough of abductions, enough of insurgency, enough of reckless killings.
We must go to the root of the problems and collectively find solutions and hold all those public office holders accountable. The Inspector General of Police must be accountable. The Chief of Army Staff must be accountable. The Chief of Naval Staff must be accountable. The Chief of Air Staff must be accountable. The essence of their being in office is to provide security.
Since the beginning of this year, Nigeria's northwest and north central have been hit by a renewed wave of armed banditry and kidnapping for ransom. Over 200 persons have been killed in attacks by bandits and cattle rustlers, and many more have been kidnapped for ransom. On Tuesday, the president met with the country's security chiefs, ordering them to do everything to end the killings and the kidnappings.
Briefings were to the effect that we've had better response from the military and security agencies in those areas that were earlier mentioned. This is particularly because of the improved synergy amongst the various agencies that are providing information and intelligence.
While the security agencies have no doubt made some progress in reining in the bandits, the attacks have by no means stopped, something this group wants to happen.
The other one, which is the most important aspect of security, employment for young people, men and women, young men and women who are leaving the universities and high schools in their millions. This government must provide employment for them.
As President Buhari begins his second term of office, he's sure going to come under further pressure to deal with the security challenges in the country. How quickly he changes strategy and reverses the situation, especially in the northwest and north central, the better it will be for everyone in this country. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Malagasy President Andry Rajoelina is currently on an official visit to France. He has held talks with French President Emmanuel Macron over the scattered islands which the country has claimed since 1973. The leaders agreed not to resort to a legal process or international mediation, but instead set up a joint commission to resolve the dispute by June 2020.
Today, the cooperation with France will regain a new dynamic around the crucial issue of energy and water, education and health in Madagascar. And I thank you, Mr. President, for your help and support in these areas.
What we're launching today is a joint partnership, a full partnership, both political and administrative, on this issue in order to find a common solution. And I believe that the goal that we can legitimately aim for is that this solution should be found for the celebrations of June 20th next year.
Well, let's now go to Rama Nyang for a look at the day's business news. Rama.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in business. Tanzania will be exporting some 700,000 tons of maize to Zimbabwe. And the Chinese telecommunications giant Huawei will keep investing in its 5G services and products despite a blacklist in the US. There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. The Tanzanian President John Pombe Magufuli says that his country will be exporting some 700,000 tons of maize to Zimbabwe after an El Nino-induced drought wilted crops in the southern African nation. Magufuli made that commitment during his two-day state visit to Zimbabwe. His visit comes as the country is grappling with a struggling economy. The UN estimates that about a third of the country's population of 15 million people need food assistance. Just last month, it appealed for $613 million in aid after a severe drought and a cyclone battered the country. In the meantime, over in East Africa, the World Bank has approved a $750 million loan to Kenya designed to support agriculture and housing projects, among others. This is the first time in years that the World Bank is actually putting money directly into the National Treasury's hands to be used at the discretion of the national executive. The East African nation has multiple development funding programs with billions of dollars with the Washington-based lender. But for years, the funding has bypassed Treasury entirely, and it's usually channeled directly into the projects. The World Bank said some of the funds will also go towards helping the creation of a digital national identification system. The loan comes under the bank's development policy operations. It's designed to support the government's policy and institutional reforms and to help make economic growth in the East African nation a lot more inclusive. FirstRand is set to become the first lender in South Africa to cut prices on its retail banking products. Now, this comes amidst the arrival of a host of new, cheaper rivals who are all scrambling for customers among banks in the country. The latest move by FirstRand to cut fees and raise rewards on its current accounts from July comes in the wake of similar decisions made by competitors like Standard Bank. Cuts in its retail banking products essentially means that rewards given back to customers will outweigh the fees charged. This will effectively pay clients to bank with them in the hopes of preventing an erosion in growth, particularly in the core middle-income segment. The United Kingdom's Trade Minister, Liam Fox, has visited Egypt for talks aimed at promoting trade and investments between the two countries. CGTN's Yasser Hakim filed this report.
The UK is one of the major investors in Egypt, especially in oil and gas and tourism sectors. But during Liam Fox's visit, the corporation has extended to other fields. One mega project signed this week is in transportation.
The UK won a tender to construct a €3 billion monorail project that includes construction, operating and maintenance, in addition to producing the train carriages locally. The monorail is important as it will link Greater Cairo from the west to the east. It will transport people between Cairo all the way to the new capital.
Deals were also signed in digitizing the public health services. The meeting comes as the UK is bracing for an exit from the European Union.
The UK is searching for its old trading partners, especially after the fallout with the EU over Brexit. England is securing alternative markets in case of a drop in trade after Brexit. But the UK has always been an important trading partner with Egypt, and Egypt is a significant market of over 100 million consumers.
In a statement in Cairo, Fox said the UK aims to be the largest investor in Africa from the G7 countries by the year 2022.
This is the first visit by Liam Fox to Egypt since he became International Trade Secretary in 2016. The Cairo stop is part of a regional tour to North African countries aimed at tapping investment and trade opportunities in the continent. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
All right, then let's move on to the ongoing saga between Huawei and the US government. The Chinese telecommunications giant says it will continue to invest in its 5G development program despite ending up on a blacklist. Now, according to the company's spokesperson, its inclusion on the United States entity list, in their view, is unwarranted.
Huawei's leading in 5G from a technology perspective. We've invested very heavily. We know from independent testing that our 5G is better than that of our competitors. We think the entity listing is unwarranted. We think it should be reversed. We think that the global supply chain, there are many companies, there are thousands and thousands of people all over the world, many of whom do not carry an American passport, who are now being affected by a law enacted by the US government. Is that fair? Is it reasonable? We believe it's not.
Still on Huawei, the company has maintained its ranking as the world's #2 smartphone vendor by volume in the first quarter of the year. That's according to a fresh report from the market's research firm Gartner. The Chinese tech giant sold over 58.4 million smartphones in the quarter, up 44.5%. According to Gartner's data, Huawei recorded the highest year-on-year growth among the world's top 5 smartphone vendors. Huawei's global market share also did go up. It went up from 10.5% to 15.7% over the same period. The company did particularly well in 2 of its largest markets, Europe and Greater China. But the impact of US action against the company is said to certainly spook buyers. Right then, you might have seen this in some parts of the internet. CGTN anchor Liu Xin joined America's Fox Business Network host Trish Regan on her primetime show for a live discussion on the ongoing trade dispute between the world's top 2 economies.
I'm very pleased tonight.
17 minutes, 6 questions, ranging from trade to Huawei and to China's economy. But with Trish Regan asking and Liu Xin answering, it turned out to be more of a Chinese anchor clearing up her American counterpart's confusion. Regan starts by asking about Liu's overall trade assessment.
Unless the United States government treat the Chinese negotiating team with respect and show the willingness to talk without using outside pressure, there is high possibility that there could be a productive trade deal.
Regan puts herself on the same page, saying, "I want to believe something can be done," and then goes on to intellectual property rights.
How do American businesses operate in China if they're at risk for having their property, their ideas, their hard work stolen?
I think there's a consensus because without the protection of IP right, nobody, no country, no individual can be stronger, can develop itself. There are companies in the United States who sue each other all the time over infringement on IP rights, and you can't say simply because these cases are happening that America is stealing.
Taking up tariffs, Regan compares China's rates with that of the US and says, let's get rid of them altogether. Liu welcomes the idea but stresses it isn't just about China and the US.
If you don't like the rules, we'll change the rules. But again, it has to be a multinational, a multilateral decision
I
process.
would just say, you know.
They move on to the latest concerns on Huawei and China's economic status and end with Regan stating her hope for win-win solutions.
No one wants a trade war. But we have to think long and hard about the right next steps.
The current US administration has been using intellectual property losses as part of its justification for the wider trade dispute with China. The White House accuses China's companies and authorities of stealing intellectual property and forcing US companies to transfer technologies to Chinese firms when they operate in China. Here's an examination of the evidence backing those allegations.
The allegations were mainly based on a 2017 report from the U.S. Commission on the Theft of American Intellectual Property. The report estimated that IP theft cost American individuals and businesses between $225 to $600 billion annually. The Commission said that most of the loss was caused by the theft of Americans' trade secrets, followed by software piracy and counterfeiting. How much is China responsible for the stolen billions? There's no clear answer.
We don't see any official algorithm or detailed calculation. In fact, the U.S. trade deficit with China has nothing to do with intellectual property, but the U.S. uses IPR protection as an excuse to escalate trade frictions anyway.
Calculations aside, from a business perspective, technology and talent transfers between China and the U.S. are now based on contracts. U.S. companies have been doing businesses and setting up research and development institutes in China since the 1990s. Those companies include Microsoft, Qualcomm, General Electric, and Intel. They came voluntarily to profit from vast Chinese market, and China let them in because it's shifting toward a market economy that respects competition.
The investments, joint ventures, trade, everything is consensual because American companies can always benefit from China. In the past, we attracted them with a low-cost business environment, and now we have a massive market and strong buying power.
The country is improving the IPR protection system at the same time. China last year paid almost $36 billion for overseas intellectual properties. That's 20 times the amount paid when China first joined the WTO in 2001. China also released a national IPR strategy in 2008 to spur innovation. The legislation body also set up a special intellectual property court earlier this year to deal with lawsuits. Michelle Vandenberg, CGTN.
And I'll leave it there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour, though. We'll be looking at South African President Cyril Ramaphosa's new cabinet. Half of it made up of women. It's essentially one of the few gender-balanced cabinets on the continent. But what should you expect from that team in the months to come? Some answers coming your way live from Johannesburg at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, though, back to Beatrice.
Brahma, thank you. And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. Burkina Faso hosts the third edition of a dance contest.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
AfricaLive. Find your voice.
Africa Simply the Best is a dance competition in Burkina Faso. The event is the brainchild of Serge Aime Coulibaly. The contest, which is now in its third edition, is being used to find the most talented dancers on the continent. Here's CGTN's Tuli Shabalala.
Serge Coulibaly is a renowned Burkinabe contemporary dancer and choreographer. He is showcasing his famous moves at his studio. Coulibaly has spent the past 20 years performing with his troupe Faso Dance Theatre in some of the most iconic venues around the world. He recently returned home to Burkina Faso, where he came up with a dance contest called Africa Simply the Best.
The real challenge for Africa is to build on the knowledge that they already have here in Africa and to expand as much as possible on the knowledge available from around the world and then bring everything together.
Coulibaly says this is his contribution to the world of dance.
Creating these types of competition stimulates people to go as far as possible to become the best, therefore expand their foundation little by little in order to become their best. It also helps to see how we can contribute to contemporary dance creation around the world.
Dancers in the region have praised the initiative.
I think it's a big opportunity because beyond the prize, there will also be opportunities to tour. So we will be touring. We will meet people who will see us, especially see me as the first prize winner, and will want me to show them my project, The Departure.
What I would like is for this trophy to be a source of inspiration for all the dancers in my country, all the dancers of Africa in particular and of the world in general, to motivate all those that decided to express themselves through the movement of their bodies, to not give up and go all the way.
The top 3 winners will receive professional dance and theatre coaching and participate in a world tour that will expose them to international audiences. Thuli Shabalala, CGTN.
And all your sports news coming up next. Here's what's ahead. We'll bring you all the latest from the Oval as thousands of fans throng the venue for the Cricket World Cup opener between England and South Africa.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born.